Fiscal Commission. In accordance with the provision of Section 1541 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, I write to forward to the Senate for confirmation the underlisted names of 30 nominees as chairman and commissioners of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The curriculum vitae are hereby attached. 1. Ebonyi, Engineer Elias Mbam, Chairman. Abia, Chris Alozie Akomas, Commissioner. Akwa Ibom, Ayang Sunday Okon, Commissioner. Anambra, Chima Philip Okafor, Commissioner. Bauchi, Professor Isa B. Mohammed, Commissioner. Benue, Samuel Ada Magbe, Commissioner. Cross River, Ntufam Eyo Nsao Wale, Commissioner. Delta, Mr. Andrew Ogenevo Agbagba, Commissioner. Ebonyi, Barrister Patrick Nwuru Mbebebu, Commissioner. Edo, Mr. Victor Wege, Commissioner. Ekiti, Amuju Philip Ajayi, Commissioner. Enugu, Mrs. Maria Chinre Aniobi, Commissioner. FCT, Honorable Musa Tanko Abari, Commissioner. Gombe, Mohammed Kabir Usman, Commissioner. Jigawa, Alhaji Ahmed Mahmoud Gumel, Commissioner. Katsina, Alhaji Kabiru Mohammed Mashi, Commissioner. Kano, Barrister Umar Farouk Abdullah, Commissioner. Kebbi, Rilwan Hussein Abashi, Commissioner. Kogi, Honorable Suleiman Kokori Abdul, Commissioner. Kwara Abdullahi Shoaibu Yaman, Commissioner. Lagos, Dr. Wright Olusegun Adekunle, Commissioner. Nasarawa, Aliu A. Abdulkadri, Commissioner. Niger, Alhaji Ibrahim Bako Bagudu Shetima, Commissioner. Ogun, Mr. Fari Adebayo, Commissioner. Ondo, Mr. Tokumbo Ajasin, Commissioner. Oyo, Kolade Daniel Abimbola, Commissioner. Plateau, Mr. Alexander Cheyenne, Commissioner. Rivers, Wena Asondu Temple, Commissioner. Yobe, Alhaji Modu Aji Jewelry, Commissioner. And Zamfara, Abubakar Sadiq A. Guzel, Commissioner. It is my hope that the single Senate will consider and confirm the nominees in the usual expeditious manner. Please accept the single Senate the assurances of my highest consideration. Yours sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari. I wish to acknowledge the presence of staff and students of Lodestar International Academy, Kubwa in Abuja, staff and students of Peace Child International School, Buhari in Abuja, staff and students of Bethel Livingstone Academy, Maraba, Nasarawa State, who are all in our gallery to observe Senate proceedings. I wish them a fruitful observation of the Senate proceedings. You can please sit down. Petitions? Yes, Senator Albert Akpan.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished and respected colleagues, Mr. President, I have a petition here from my constituents against the current AIG, Musa Kimo of Zone 6, the current CP of Akwa Ibom State, Ibrahim Kaoje, and CSP Udeme Stephen Brown, as well as SP Idoroyin Ime Akpabio, who is a cousin to the former Senate Minority Leader. Mr. Senate President, this petition is about the unwarranted arrest of Akwa Ibom people, politically motivated killings in Akwa Ibom State, and the people of Akwa Ibom State are demanding for justice. Attached to this petition, Mr. President, is a statement I personally made at the area command office in Zone 6 in Ikotekpene zone about the arrest of the over 200 thugs from Edo State who were arrested and handed over to the police and were much later released by the AIG Musakimo Ibrahim.
Come and lay your petition. Come and lay your petition.
Mr. President.
Alba, come and lay your petition. Petition is referred to ethics and privileges, brought back in 2 weeks. Any other petition? Petition? Yes. Senator Abuja.
Thank you, Mr. President. This petition is from my constituents, which comprise of Zuba, Tungamaji, Ido, Anagada, Gaku, Pakuru, Yelwan Zuba, Tungan, Samu, and Giri, and other areas bounded the environment. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it's a complaint and an appeal to the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the compulsory acquisition of Abuja natives' land by the Nigerian Army. Mr. President, even yesterday, the roads were blocked and the highway between Abuja, Zuba, Kaduna, and that of Kogi from local axis through to Gwagwalada were blocked because the army is taking over this land. And what my constituents want is for the Senate to call the attention of the Ministry of the Federal Capital Territory and indeed the authority of the army so that they can sit together and look at the issues that are there and to see who has either allocation letter or even if the military was given allocation letter or they just went to the place and took over the land. So, Mr. President, what our natives here are asking for is that they should be called upon, the army should be called upon so that there's no breakdown in law and order. People are going to their farm every day, they are being arrested by the military, which is not proper. So, take it easy, take it easy. I have a right to protect my constituents. They voted for me and I came here. It's not against the party. And some of these people could even be from your party. Gwagwalada Area Council is APC.
Come and lay your petition. Come and lay your petition.
And for the, you can't even talk. Gwagwalada Area Council was won by APC. And then you are here talking, you can't defend. I will finish this because in the first place, I'm the senator for the Federal Capital Territory. And sir.
Come and lay your petition.
Mr. President, I understand the route of the APC and the way that the elections came out, so it's not a problem. I want to say that you should be congratulating me. Yes, you should be congratulating me for a clear victory. Mr. President, well, we, the Abuja natives residing on a vast land bounded at the north by Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, bounded at the south by Giri Airport Road, from Giri Junction by flyover to Abuja Airport Junction, by flyover bounded at the east by Airport Road, from Airport Junction flyover, and bounded at the west of Kaduna.
Okay, come and lay your petition then.
Mr. President, let me proudly, confidently, having properly defeated my colleagues here in the FCT, go and lay go and lay it.
Petition is referred to ethics and privileges. Report back in 2 weeks. Yes, point of order, Senator Dino Malai.
Mr. President, my very respected colleagues, Dino Melaye, Kogi West, Senator-elect Kogi, by the special grace of God. Mr. President, this morning, I draw celestial inspiration from Order 42, matter of urgent public importance. The matter for discussion shall, if possible, be referred to the President of the Senate before commencement of the day sitting, and the President of the Senate shall refuse to allow claim unless he is satisfied that the matter is definite and urgent. If the claim is allowed by the President of the Senate and the leave of the Senate is given by at least 1/5 of all senators, the matter shall stand over to the next legislative day. Mr. President, I rise this morning as a true representative of the people. And I want to say what I'm raising this morning has nothing to do with political parties, but like I always say, Mr. President, if you say the truth, you will die. If you lie, you will die. I want to say the truth and die. Mr. President, I want to bring before the Senate the election both on the 9th and on the 23rd in this country. And I believe that the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall not close our eyes to just the happenings in those two elections. I want that election to be debated on this floor. I want to bring a motion to be addressed by this Senate in the next legislative day so that the militarization of the process, the abuses of this election will not go undiscussed in this parliament for posterity's sake, and so that solutions can be given and the president can also be properly advised and the electoral act be signed into law as we begin to prepare for future elections. Mr. President, this is my prayer so that this can be discussed by the Senate extensively, and then as a Senate, we will debate this matter. We will give our account of what happened in our various senatorial districts with the vision of correcting our electoral malpractices.
Distinguished colleagues, Senator Dina has come on Order 42 according to our rules. Need the leave of the Senate. This can come on next legislative day. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Distinguished colleagues, by the order, you only need 1/5. By the order, you only need 1/5 of the orders of the so for next legislative day. Distinguished Senator.
Mr. President.
Approach.
Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President. Please order now.
Order, please. Order, please.
Mr. President.
Order, please.
A motion, let me say, a non-partisan motion was on the floor. You ruled. We didn't hear the ruling. What was your ruling? No. We didn't hear the ruling. What was...
The ruling is that, according to the rules, we only need 1/5 for us to take the motion. And I believe from the air of voice, 1/5 supported us for it to be on the next legislative day. That is the ruling. I mean, it says 1/5 of the... So at the next legislative day, the matter will come for debate. I think we should move on. Yeah.
My concern is that technically, sir, there was no motion because first, Senator Dino Malai introduced himself as senator-elect. That was what he said. Yes. So he was not speaking. He was not speaking as a senator.
Distinguished colleagues, please, whenever the motion does come up for discussion, I am sure that we will all be guided to ensure that it is done in a manner that stays within the confines of what is acceptable. And we will ensure that the debate, if it goes into any way that addresses legal issues or court cases, we'll take note of that. If it goes a place where it is becoming too partisan, also we'll take note of that. And I think, and then also we'll ensure that the motion itself and the prayers are well brought forward to us before we actually agree on when to put on the other paper. I can assure you that that will be debated at the leadership before it comes on the other paper, where we all see what those debates are and ensure that it does not become as partisan as it should be. So I think so. Our advice was that we move to most important issues to deal of the budget, and let us leave this matter until when it comes and we attend to it properly and ensure that it does not. Leader of the Senate. Yeah. Point of order. Yeah.
Mr. President, my name is Senator Barau Jibrin. I come under Order 73. Any senator may challenge the opinion of the President or the chairman by claiming a division. Mr. President, I don't know your ruling on the motion that was allowed.
Distinguished colleagues, distinguished colleagues. Please, distinguish this.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, sir.
Please, distinguished colleagues, do not allow us to make an abuse of our processes because of one motion. The rules are very clear. It says that the leave of 1/5 of what is required, and that has been surpassed. So let us move forward. The issues and your concerns, we address it when we come to debate. If and when that debate comes, we will address it. So let us move on to what is on the other paper for today. And please, Leader of the Senate. Please. Yeah, point of order, Senator.
Mr. President, I come under 56(9). Can you please listen to me? 56(9). When a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or make any noise or disturbance to interruption. Mr. President, I think that it's a new dawn. We have all come here to...
Noted. Thank you. It's noted. Senator Aduda is noted. Thank you. I've heard you. It's noted. All right, noted. All right. Leader of the Senate.
The noise is coming from your wing. No, it's coming from your side. I love to talk to people that show Minority whip.
You are not raising a position. You are making noise like raising. We will match you. We will ensure that we match you. Whatever nonsense you want.
Mr. President, I believe that we can do better than this. Mr. President, very well respected colleagues, the first business of the day is the presentation of an executive bill standing in my name on the Environmental Impact Assessment Act repeal and enactment Bill 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Environmental Impact Assessment Act
Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2019, SB 723, first reading.
Environment Impact Assessment Act, Repeal and Enactment Bill 2019, SB 723, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the second business of the day is also the presentation of an executive bill standing in my name on the Nigerian Food Safety Bill 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Nigerian Food Safety Bill 2019, SB 724, first reading.
Nigerian Food Safety Bill 2019, SB 724, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is a motion standing in my name on executive communication from Mr. President CNC on the 2019-2021 medium-term expenditure framework MTF and fiscal strategy paper in accordance with Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. Distinguished senators will recall that the request from Mr. President CNC on the 2019-2021 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper in accordance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 was read on Tuesday, the 6th of November 2018. Mr. President, with your permission, I wish to move that the Senate do refer the request of Mr. President CNC on the 2019 and 2021 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper to the appropriate committee for further legislative action. I so move.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I second the motion as moved by the Senate leader.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor to support the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. This is referred to Finance. Chairman, Committee Finance, can we have the report back by Wednesday next week? All right. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very respected colleagues, the second order of the day, the second reading of the Appropriation Bill 2019. Distinguished senators will recall that Mr. President CNC presented the 2019 budget to a joint session of the National Assembly on Wednesday, the 19th of December 2018, and in accordance with Standing Order 92, Section 1B, the 2019 Appropriation Bill is deemed to have been read the first time by virtue of the presentation of the bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. Mr. President, with your permission, I move that the Appropriation Bill 2019 be read a second time.
Leader, can you lead the debate?
Thank you very much, Mr. President, very respected colleagues. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me congratulate Nigeria for holding and conducting general elections, successful elections in the presidential and National Assembly elections and the gubernatorial and state assembly elections. Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, let me congratulate the National Assembly for being part and parcel of that success story, for always backing with the legislative intervention at any time required. Having said that, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me say that this bill, this appropriation bill, is one avenue, one route to ensuring that government provides the necessary services and infrastructural development to our people. And of course, that does not need any partisanship. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on the general principles of the 2019 appropriation bill, which was laid before this chamber on Thursday, the 20th of December 2019, by the Presidency in Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The bill is deemed to have been read the first time by virtue of its being laid before the joint session of the National Assembly on that Thursday of December. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the bill seeks to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation the total sum of 8,636,578,915 naira only. The planned expenditure for 2019 is lower than the approved 2018 Appropriation Act of the figure of 9.12 trillion, and that is a decrease by 3%. The budget deficit is projected to decrease to 1.86 trillion, and that is about 1.33% of our GDP in 2019, from 1.95 trillion projected for 2018. And that is about 1.73% of estimated GDP. This reduction is in line with this administration's plans to progressively reduce budget deficit and borrowings. About 89% of the deficit, which represents 1.6 trillion naira, will be financed through new borrowings, while about 210 billion naira is expected from the process of privatization of some public enterprises. Debt service revenue ratio, which was high at 69% in 2017, has led to concerns being raised about the sustainability of the nation's debt. Therefore, while the national debt remains unsustainable, it is imperative that we tackle our revenue problem so that we do not end up with a debt sustainability issue. The proposed 8.83 trillion naira of 2019 aggregate expenditure comprises of the following: recurrent cost of 4.04 trillion naira, debt service of 2.14 trillion naira, 6% higher than 2018, statutory transfers of about 492.36 billion naira, and that represents 7% decrease over 2018. Sinking fund of 120 billion naira, which will be used to retire maturing bonds to local contractors. Thus, total debt service provision is 2.26 trillion naira, and a capital expenditure of 2.031 trillion naira, including capital supplementation, but excluding capital component of statutory transfers. Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the 2019 budget proposal is based on the following assumptions and macro framework: oil price benchmark of $60 per barrel, oil production estimate of 2.3 million barrels per day, including condensates, exchange rate of 305 naira to the dollar, GDP growth of 3.01%, and I'm happy to report, Mr. President, that our GDP has increased, our economy has grown by over 2%, and for a long time, we experienced increase in what was ordinarily a deficit in our trade with other countries. Mr. President, this budget is also based on inflation rate of 9.98%, a nominal consumption of 119.28 trillion naira, and a nominal GDP of 139.65 trillion naira. Total revenue is projected at 6.97 trillion naira, which is 3% lower than the 2018 estimate of 7.17 trillion naira, consisting of oil revenues projected at 3.7 trillion naira, including LNG dividends and mining. Of course, that is 23% higher than 2018, while non-oil revenue is estimated at 1.39 trillion naira. The estimate for non-oil revenue consists of 799.52 billion naira from company income tax, 229.34 billion naira from value-added tax, VAT, and custom duties of 302.55 billion naira. We have reduced our expectation from independent revenues to 624.58 billion naira. Other revenues expected in 2019 include various recoveries of 203.38 billion naira, 710 billion naira as proceeds from the restructuring of government's equity in joint ventures and other sundry incomes of 104.11 billion naira. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the 2019 budget proposal is intended to sustain the economy on the path of inclusiveness, diversified and sustainable growth in order to continue to lift significant numbers of our citizens out of poverty. The underlying drivers of the 2019 revenue projections have been adjusted to reflect the current realities. On the expenditure side, allocations to ministries, departments, and agencies of government are guided by the three objectives of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, which are 1, restoring and sustaining growth, 2, investing in our people, and 3, building a globally competitive economy. Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the 2019 capital budget is designed to align expenditure to long-term objectives, sustainable development, as well as fiscal consolidation, inclusive growth and job creation, stabilization of the welfare of Nigerians by focusing more on A, microeconomic stability, B, consolidating on structural reforms, C, enhancing governance and institutional goals, D, diversification of the economy with key emphasis on agriculture, investments in priority sectors like solid minerals, and E, self-sufficiency in food and other products. To consolidate on the momentum of the 2018 budget implementation, many ongoing capital projects have been provided for in the 2019 budget by allocating 30% to capital projects. This is deliberately structured to demonstrate this administration's strong commitment to investing in critical infrastructure capable of spurring sustainable growth and creating sustainable jobs. Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, a total of 2.2 trillion naira is allocated for capital spending, inclusive of capital and statutory transfers. For comprehensiveness and transparency, the expenditure plans of the larger government-owned enterprises, as well as multilateral and bilateral project-tied loans, have been integrated into 2019 to 2021 medium-term expenditure framework. With the inclusion of 275.88 billion naira representing capital for the larger GOS and 556.02 billion for multilateral bilateral project-tied loans, the aggregate capital budget is 3.12 trillion naira. This represents 30% of the total federal government proposed expenditure for the 2019 year. In order to get full value for monies expended by the government over time and to avoid duplication and waste, this administration's emphasis will continue to be on completion of existing projects.
Accordingly, provisions have been made to carry over projects that are not likely to be fully funded under the 2018 budget to the 2019 capital budget. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the allocation to the Social Intervention Program (SIP) has been retained at 500 billion naira, consisting of 350 billion naira recurrent and 150 billion naira capital. This reflects the continued determination of this federal government to pursue inclusive, gender-sensitive and proper growth. In addition, to maintain the peace in the Niger Delta, the provision of 65 billion naira for the Presidential Amnesty Program has been retained in the 2019 budget. Similarly, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the sum of 45 billion naira has been provided for the Northeast Intervention Fund, as well as the sum of 10 billion naira as take-off grant for the Northeast Development Commission, NEDC. To further support small and medium-scale enterprises, which is the focus of this administration industrialization drive, the sum of 15 billion naira have been set aside for the recapitalization of the Bank of Agriculture and the Bank of Industry. In addition, the sum of 10 billion naira is provided as a grant to the Bank of Industry for the purpose of subsidizing the interest rates charged on loans to small and medium-scale enterprises. This is intended to make it possible for them to access single-digit interest rate loans from the bank. The 2019 budget further seeks to devote substantial part of the recurrent costs for the payment of salaries and overheads in ministries providing very critical public services, such as 569.07 billion naira for the Ministry of the Interior, 435.62 billion naira for the Ministry of Defense, 462.24 billion naira for the Ministry of Education, and 315.62 billion naira for the Ministry of Health. The allocation to these ministries represents significant increases over those in previous budgets, underscoring this administration's commitment to increasing investments in national security and human capital development. The devotion of this portion of our recurrent expenditure to these institutions will ensure that our teachers, our armed forces personnel, our doctors, our nurses, our policemen, our firefighters, prison service officers, and many more critical service providers are paid competitively and also on time. The 2019 budget seeks to stimulate the national economy, making it more competitive by focusing on infrastructural development, delivery of inclusive growth, and prioritizing the welfare of our citizens. To safeguard lives and property, equipping farmers with the right tools, technology, and techniques, empowering and enabling minds to operate in a safe and secure environment, and training of our youth through revival of our vocational institutions to ensure they are competitive enough to seize the opportunities that will arise for this economic revival. Mr. President, on a final note, distinguished colleagues, I believe that all the proposals in this budget are laudable and are tailored to make and meet the critical needs of this country at this point of our democratic evolution and economic situation. All these are targeted at making Nigeria move to the next desired level of economic, social development and growth. I therefore urge you, all my distinguished colleagues, to support the second reading of this bill and committal to the committees for detailed consideration. Thank you for the opportunity and privilege.
Deputy Senate President.
All right. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me start by commending the Senate leader for the lead debate. Dear colleagues, the budget debate is a very important debate, and the appropriation bill is possibly the most important bill in any legislative year. So we must take this as seriously as we can, because this is the bill that deals with interests, hopes, and aspirations of not only citizens, but also foreigners and those unborn. And that's why I would like to start my contribution by addressing the issue of the debt profile. I'm happy that the state leader mentioned that it is becoming increasingly unsustainable, and we must be able to caution ourselves before we mortgage the future of our children. Some countries are already in danger, including Indonesia, because of the borrowing they had in the past, because for every money you borrow, there must be a day for payment. We must therefore be cautious. Yes, it is important that we address our infrastructural needs through appropriate financing, but I believe there are other creative ways of funding these infrastructures, including PPP and concessioning. For us to depend on borrowing means that we are putting our future in jeopardy. And therefore, it is time for us to ensure that our debt to GDP ratio must not exceed the acceptable level. Having said that, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the other issue I would like to talk about is the budgetary cycle. Increasingly, we've deviated from the financial year proposed by the Constitution. The Constitution says in Section 318 that the financial year is the period of 12 months from 1st January of any beginning of every year, which means it's usually between 1st of January and 31st of December, or any other time as may be prescribed by the National Assembly. Over the last 4 years, the average period for which budgets have been passed in this Assembly has always been in May, and I believe it's a very dangerous trend. We must have to go back and see how we can go back to the financial year prescribed by the Constitution, because I know that those who prescribed that period must have thought it twice at the time they did that. And the implication of what's happening now is that the executive consecutively or consistently have brought the budget quite late, usually towards the end of December or shortly before we leave on break in December. And that makes it impossible for the National Assembly to consider this until sometime into January. And this year has even been worse because we have to go into election. So the implication, therefore, is that budget will be delayed, and then even the implementation starts quite late. And when you pass budget in May, for instance, you are passing just at the verge of the rainy season. And Nigeria is a developing country. We need a lot of infrastructure development, and most of this development can only take place during the dry season. If we must adjust the financial period as provided by the Constitution, we need to adjust it backwards to start maybe in September, so that the whole of the dry season from October to sometime April can be utilized. But for us to move our budgetary, the financial year from January to May, I believe that this is not good for our development, and we must do everything possible. As we go into the next assembly, I believe that's something we need to address between the executive and the parliament to ensure that we discipline ourselves regarding the time to prepare the budget, the time to present it, and the time to consider it. Because this is what happens every year. Now, we know that we must budget, there will be budget next year. I expect the executive to start preparation of this budget early enough so that latest by September, that budget would have come, and they will have maybe a month or two to deal with it, so that implementation will start early enough during the dry season. And finally, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, now that we are just out of election, yes, the budget may have its own shortcomings, it may have some mistakes, it may have some distortions, but I think that the best we can do for our country at this moment is to pass this budget expeditiously. What I recommend, therefore, is that as soon as we're able to send it to our committees, the committees need to meet with the necessary agencies and be able to cross the T's and then dot the I's and quickly return it. No matter the imperfections, we'll pass it, because this budget is not just about us or the executive. It's all about Nigerians who are out there who want water, electricity, roads, and other infrastructure. It's about our staff who want to be paid salaries. It's about our commitment to the international community. So we need to do whatever we can, showing some level of patriotism to ensure that this is passed, no matter the imperfections, and then because we've run out of time already, and then so that the implementation of the budget will start in earnest. So on this note, I recommend, Mr. President, that an early passage of this budget so that the implementation will start in earnest as well.
Senator Gumel.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abdullah Gumal. I come from Jigawa, northwest of Jigawa State.
Yes.
The intervention on this budget is on 3 areas. But first, Mr. President, I want to commend the presentation of the lead debate by the leader of the Senate. He touches all the areas of the budget. And this is why I restricted myself to the 2 or 3 areas of intervention. One of the campaign promises upon which the government was elected was a social investment program. Though this scheme, like the Government Enterprises Empowerment Program JEEP, National Women Empowerment Fund, NAWEF, Trader Money, and Empower. This program has been a resounding success, as can be attested through the victory of the President in the just concluded general election. As such, government is encouraged to expand the scope and capture more citizens and categories of Nigerians in the 2019 budget as we are going to the next level. Secondly, in the major source of revenue in the country, efforts should be made to diversify further source of revenue, particularly in the rural areas that fall within the state and local governments. Mr. President, I therefore suggest that the federal government should encourage states and local government to begin registration and issuance of land titles of farmlands and houses to make them valuable, so that the farmers don't have to wait for the government to guarantee their loans. They can go freely to the commercial banks where substantial allocation are made for farming, so that they can assess the loan within the titles of their various land and farmland and houses, which they already got the titles. Through this process, Mr. President, the government, the various levels of government, from local government to the federal government, are going to access revenues out of these processes. And in terms of perfecting the mortgages of landed properties to access this agricultural loan. In the same manner, government should increase investment in the agriculture value chain. The effect of that investment will lead to processing of farm produce to international standard and fit in for export and to earn more foreign exchange. This will provide employment for teaming youth along the value chain. Several decades ago, we have commodity boards and guarantee stability of the prices for produce for farmers. In this time, when the attention of government is on agriculture, it has become expedient to once more re-establish those commodity boards. Mr. President, with this few remarks, because a lot of people wanted to contribute, I wanted to say, Mr. President, we should expeditiously approve this budget to go to the committee. Thank you.
Senator Barrow Jibril.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Barrow Jibril, everything kind of north. Mr. President, I want to begin by commending Mr. President by the way and manner the 2019 budget was packaged. It was packaged in a way as to further work on the foundation that has been laid since 2015 by this administration to strengthen or to review and rejig our economy, which was before then highly battered. Mr. President, a lot has been done in the past 4 years. Now, this budget, as packaged, as I said earlier, is to strengthen and to create a means of building an economy which will be strong, up and doing, and will go further to better the life of the people of this country. It is a big move by the president, and I want to congratulate him for having the zeal and a good team, an excellent team that was able to put this budget together. The quest of the budget, as clearly shown by its content, is to create an inclusive growth and to also diversify our economy and to have a sustainable economic development. And these are all put through the direction and objectives of the policy thrust of the government, the economic recovery and growth plan, which is anchored on 3 things. Number 1, growth restoration, as I said earlier, to further create that trajectory of growth that has been created, to continue that trajectory, and to also invest in people, to continue to invest in people through the social investment program. It's a wonderful move, which is really working to create an avenue that is now making the lives of the people of this country better. So this trajectory is intended to be continued through the packaging of our 2019 budget. This is very, very commendable. Not only that, to also build our economy and make it globally competitive while focusing on the development of critical infrastructure. This is a very, very good move, which has started and is continuing, because when you have all these things put together, certainly you have that enabling environment that will allow the real sector to be up and doing, to allow all the other sectors, the agricultural sector, the solid mineral sector, and every sector of the economy to be up and doing. And the collective result, what will result when all these are done, of course, is to have a sound and up and doing economy. And that's what we want. Once you have a sound economy, you're home and dry. So this budget is packaged in that direction. And I'm sure the government has the zeal to get it implemented. And once we get all the contents, all the visions implemented, we'll further take our country to the next level economically. Mr. President, the aggregate expenditure, or let me begin with the revenue. The aggregate revenue is estimated to be 6.97 trillion. It is a reduction. We have a reduction here compared to what was projected last year. And I commend the federal government for doing this because it's in line of being realistic with our revenue projections. This is very good. Instead of creating higher figures that cannot be actualized, it is important that we get figures, make projections that can be actualized. And being realistic is really what should be done. Now, the expenditure, of course, last year it was higher. Last year we had a figure of 9.2 trillion. But this year, considering the fact that revenue is now being projected to be lower than last year, of course, you should expect the expenditure projection, the capital expenditure projection as a whole to be lower. So this year is lower. 2019 is going to be lower, and it's in line with the fact that the government wants to be realistic in its projection. The deficit that will come off that has been estimated is 1.86 trillion. Well, this is good. It's within the limit accepted. And I'm really convinced, going by the projections, on how to meet up this deficit, on how to realize money to fill this gap. The way and manner that has been explained is something that I'm really sure that that is good, and we will not have problem in really funding the deficit. Mr. President, I want to say that the oil benchmark, the oil production benchmark 2.3, even though it might look something that may not be quite realizable, I'm sure the government has put measures in place to make sure that we realize this projection target. See the same target with last year? Even though last year we were not able to meet the target, it was hovering about 1.9 to about 2 million barrels per day. And I'm sure with the zeal put forward by the government, we'll be able to realize the 2.3. But we shouldn't be complacent. We should really work hard to make sure that we're able to really actualize the target of 2.3 million, production of 2.3 million per barrel a day. The projection of $60 per barrel of oil, well, some are saying that it's a bit higher, but going by the current price of oil, even in the international market today, which is about $66 per barrel, I think it's something that can be realized. I also commend the executive for picking this figure, which is quite realizable. Now, the exchange rate, the same with last year. I think also this is okay. We'll be able to go along with this. We'll be able to go with this because it works for last year, and the figures we're having now in terms of our projections clearly indicate that it's a very good projection. That is the exchange rate of 305 naira to the dollar. Mr. President, I want to also refer to the projection, the submission made by the Senate President, by the...
Chief Whip, maybe you have to take the role of being timekeeper so that we can, yes. So, Senator Jibu, we can round up. Give us 5 minutes.
Well, my attention has been drawn that I need to round up. I want to commend the President for really making good projections to critical areas like education. But I feel that the Ministry of Education, particularly university and other tertiary institutions, need more money, considering the challenges they are facing in terms of putting in place critical infrastructures in their campuses for their operations. I would therefore request that while we move into the nitty-gritty of the budgetary process. The National Assembly should look at ways that we can improve on the figures that were submitted by the executive in this regard. I'll also look at the areas of security. The government has done very well there. We should also look at areas, that area properly. If there are certain areas that we need to improve upon, we should also do so. But I want to stress the fact, emphasize the fact that we need to improve on the figures that were projected for the Ministry of Education, because education is really important and sine qua non to all the objectives we want to realize in the budget. Without proper educational foundation for our youth, for the talented people of this country, all what we need to put in place in terms of bringing about prosperity by having sound economy in this country will not be realized. I therefore request that we look at the Ministry of Education budget very well so that we can improve on it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Chendu.
Thank you, Mr. President, my dear colleagues. I am Senator Andrew Uchendu, and I represent Rivers East Senatorial District. Mr. President, there's no gainsaying the fact that a lot of discipline has been brought to our budgetary process, and there's greater sanity now than ever before. Even though that is the case, we will recall that implementation of our budget over the years has been a major problem. We come up with very laudable programs, but implementation becomes a major issue. And I think that the executive needs to be a little bit more realistic now. There are key parameters that will guide the implementation, successful implementation of any budget. Time of approval of the budget and the assumptions which bedeck the projections in the budget. Mr. President, I think that it is time for us to learn from reality, like the Deputy Senate President pointed out. If we know that in our own climate, there are low periods of activity, then we should rearrange our budget presentation towards that period so that by the time we get done with discussing, presenting the budget and passing the budget, we are in the right time for budget implementation. Any budget that is being implemented from the dry season period obviously will have something above average. Over the years, at least for the past 10 years, we've not had anything close to 50% budget implementation. And it's arising primarily from delay in budget presentation and passage. The other issue, Mr. President, is the assumptions made by the budget. Whatever is coming up as budget estimate must be derived from the revenue projections. Even though my colleague, Senator Jibril, seemed to be comfortable with those two assumptions, particularly the oil price and production, I can say I am not comfortable with that. It is better for us to have a positive variance than a negative variance in our budget processes. Take the case of the oil price. We are taking $60 per barrel, the benchmark. Considering the volatility of this very product and the market, it seems unrealizable that we will be dependent on $60 per barrel. Tomorrow it may get down to 40%, and the system will be put under panic. Why not we come up with a 2-digit difference between the market price and the budget benchmark? That will give us enough flexibility in coping with any volatility that we may face in the market. Again, Mr. President, we have been projecting 2.3 million barrels per day production for some time. For 2019, we're having 2.3 million barrels. But have we been able to achieve this over the years? The answer is no. Then why are we sticking to this figure when we know that we're not going to arrive at that? There are no techniques, strategies we have put into the system that will make us achieve what we have budgeted for or what we have assumed. Therefore, it makes greater sense that we will come back, even if it is 2 million barrels per day, and project on that. And if we produce more than that, then it gives us a positive variance that we can easily manipulate. The other area I would like to talk about is the diversification of the economy. We have seen how many more hands, idle hands, that have been brought into production by the Rice Anchors program. So many Nigerians are now involved in rice production. Mr. President, there are 2 other zones in this country, the South-South and the Southeast, that have been proved agriculturally to be suitable for oil palm production. And I believe that if sufficient incentive package are arranged and put in, we'll be increasing our production and engaging many more idle hands into production. And that will help the economy to be on the move. And I think this is very much advisable and should be taken into account. I will want to talk about the Niger Delta area, particularly the NDDC. Over the years, releases, the Niger Delta Development Commission have been having shortfalls in fund releases. Shortfall in fund releases. And one is expecting that in 2019, adequate provision will be made to reduce these shortfalls. I am surprised, Mr. President, that there is no provision to reduce the shortages in fund releases. And I think during the committee session, people should try and see what they can do in this area. Outside that, let me finally talk of few improvements that can be brought into our budget preparation. Mr. President, if you check through the budget, you will see that most of the expenditure heads and amounts have no description. They are just figures, arithmetic, just organized. The justification for it, target for it are not provided. Can't we, in our preparation of our budget, provide justifications for some of these things so that when the National Assembly is looking into the defense, they will not know the justification for this, instead of waiting to look at an array of arithmetic that does not make much sense. Again, you find out that in some areas, there are no standardization. People will provide, some ministries, some agencies will provide comparative figures. 2018, these are the figures. 2019, this is the projection. But in some agencies, no such comparison. And it becomes difficult to compare the budget. Having said this, Mr. President, I will join the majority leader in asking that, if for nothing else, let's do this for this very year. Let's give expeditious passage to the 2019 budget proposal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Ndume.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Mohammed Ali Ndume, representing Borno South. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the second reading of these bills intends discussion on the general principles. The leader of the Senate have captured it all. Time is not on our side. Nigerians are very anxious, and the executive are waiting to implement the budget. And everybody have talked about the issue of timing in order to process the appropriation or the budget proposal. Now that we have identified some of the key problems, I want to appeal to our colleagues to hasten the discussion and let it end tomorrow, if possible, Mr. President, so that we can refer it to the committee. And all of us here are in one way or the other a member of a particular committee, so that once in the committee level, we can look at the nitty-gritty, the mathematics, the arithmetic, the zone, the apportioning, and other things, so that, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I'm appealing that by the end of this month, at least we would have passed the budget. We know here that budgets are never implemented in this country to a desirable level. The highest we have was during this 8th Senate. where we cooperated and releases are made, and I think we at one time achieved 70%. So let us target moving above that 70%. And how do we do that? We look at this budget quickly and pass it. We set a target that we must pass this budget by the end of this month, so that if there is any other thing that comes up later, it can come up by way of supplementary budget, by way of amendment to the budget. Let us take this out of our way and allow the executive to do what they are, to do the needful, as they call it. So, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, that is my contribution. But, Mr. President, I need your attention here, please. I want to conclude my contribution by the way of a motion that discussion on this budget, I move that it should be concluded tomorrow and pass over to the committee for detailed work. I so move, Mr. President.
Yes, Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. First is to take into account that we are just coming out of an election period, which has taken so much of our time and which has eaten into the proposal for the passing of this budget. But what is important is the fact that the debate on the principles of the bill have aptly been captured by the leader. And if you look at the framework of the budget, concerns have been raised as to the debt sustainability based on the borrowing plan to finance the 2019 budget. But experts will tell you that considering the population of Nigeria, considering our human resources, we are grossly borrowing, under borrowing. And that is the fact, sir. So that fear of sustainability of our debt appears to be misplaced when you juxtapose that to our population, our resources, both human and capital. But I think there is one other aspect that appears to be missing in the budget, which the National Assembly should look at. If you look at the framework of the budget, it is intended to do what has never been done before. That is to target what we call even redistribution of income. So virtually every other person who has opportunity to queue into this budget will have one thing or the other to do to be able to get some level of sustenance by putting his best. It may be necessary, Mr. President, for the National Assembly to set a date to critically look at the funding of agriculture in Nigeria. This is important because if you look at 569.7 billion for the Ministry of Interior, 435 for Defense, 162 for Ministry of Education, 315 for the Ministry of Health. And the basis for that was that it's for the payment of salaries and overhead for ministry providing critical public services, as the leader put it. I think there is nothing that is as critical as providing food on the tables of the millions of Nigerians that are available. So the National Assembly should look at this budget and see whether we can get a chunk from somewhere for the purpose of funding agriculture. This is very, very important. And I think that if you look at the entire budget itself, it has succeeded in building upon the successes recorded in the previous budgets, at least for setting on course government that is determined to look at the welfare and well-being of its citizens by making sure that the proper platform is created for every Nigerian to actualize his needs based on his contribution to the economy. And I think this is a very commendable approach to budgeting. So in conclusion, Mr. President, let me commend the government for taking this critical look at the problems that exist in this country and addressing them through physical policies that are intended to target the Nigerian populace. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Gbenga Shafa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, let me join the previous speakers in congratulating the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, for bringing up this budget, which I will refer to as budget of consolidation in the sense that it has been able to look at the foundation laid in the last 3.5 years, and given the time which it is being presented, the primary aim and purpose and objective is to imbibe the spirit of continuity as far as our capital projects and critical infrastructure are concerned. Well, I've always referred to the past when such budgets are presented, and I will emphasize the fact that this government has really tried in ensuring that capital releases have been improved upon from 2015 till date. If you look at the last capital release, it came to about a bit of 820 billion, which forms barely 20% of the projected 2.8 trillion towards capital projects. Well, I think government should look at that and see how we can work on fund releases in order to make these projects come to reality. Again, Mr. President, the total budget for 2018 came to about 9.1 trillion. We've come down to 8.73 in 2019. I've always emphasized again that it is not the size of the budget. It is about implementation. If we have a large budget with lofty ideas and we don't have the funds to ensure its proper implementation, then it comes to nothing. So this is an area that I would want the executive to look at in a manner that releases will be on time and will be increased, and then give priority to critical ongoing infrastructural projects. I am glad this government has done that.
Chief Whip, are you keeping time from there?
Now, we are talking about transportation. There is no successful agricultural or social intervention project without a solid transportation system. And I'm glad this government is looking at that area critically. And I will be specific. If we are able to produce so much and we cannot transport them to areas where they will be beneficial to our people, then most of this produce, at the end of the day, rots This government is looking at that, and that is why it has concentrated on providing critical infrastructure. To be specific, I can see that the government has tried as much as possible.
Well, this is where we draw the curtain on today's live broadcast of Senate plenary. At the moment, the Senate has commenced debate on the 2019 budget. Well, before then, the Senate had received executive communication from Mr. President on the confirmation of chairman and commissioners for the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. Well, at this point in time, we'll now hand over to our studios for the continuation of the scheduled program for the day. I am Ignatius Nkwo, and on behalf of the outside broadcast crew, I say enjoy the rest of our programs.